everyone, it's Nicole. Welcome back to my channel and another paper crafting video tutorial. Today I'm super excited to share some beautiful stenciled postage Christmas cards using Waffle Flower products. So Waffle Flower has an amazing assortment of postage themed product, and they've added to it this year with some new layering stencils, and that's what we're going to focus on today. I created 3 designs with 3 of the brand new stencil sets. However, then I had some leftover pieces, so I implemented those into a 4th card. I always love when I can get more out of a crafting session. We are starting with the Snowman layering stencils, postage stencils. I am using some Simon Says Stamp Positively Saturated inks today. We are using the colors Sky and Night for our stenciling. So the color I'm using right here is the color Sky. This is a 2-piece stencil, and one of the things that I especially love about these stencils from Waffle Flower is that not only do they work beautifully, but at the top of the stencil, it does say what stencil set it is. If it is one of 2 or one of 4, in this case, it's one of 2 stencils. And then it tells you like light, background, medium. It tells you basically, it clues you in the order of the stenciling and kind of what color of ink to use basically. And I think that that is brilliant. It's very wonderful. I mentioned this in a recent live that if you do a huge crafting session, have tons of stencils out. I often do this. This is why I told this story, and then you go clean them all, and then you put them in a dish drainer or whatever, out on paper towels, whatever the case may be, to dry. I usually do that, come back the next day to put them away, and then I have to sort them all, and it is kind of a pain if you don't know which ones are which, or you can't remember how many stencils. Sometimes there's 6 in a set or more. And so matching them up can sometimes be a little bit of a pill, and this makes it so much easier. I love, love, love it. So there with that first stencil, not only did I do the blue background, but I also did charcoal for the eyes and mouths and mocha ink for the arms on the snowmen where the arms are showing. Now I'm taking the color Night, which is a darker blue, and we're going to ink the pieces in the second stencil. This is again a set of 2. We're going to do the buttons down the front, the snowflake, all in the color Night. Then we're going to take the color Cantaloupe and we're going to do the carrot noses. Now I opted to do more of the blue color combination for this card. The remaining cards today are very traditional, reds, greens, all of that good stuff. But this is what I call my traditional, or those will be my traditional Christmas. This is more of a wintry mix kind of card. The snowmen are probably my favorite. It's hard to pick a favorite. It really is. But I'm a huge Snowman fan, so I loved these. So after our stenciling is done, and I should have mentioned this, I'm so sorry, I forgot. But I used the Postage Collage die, the original die from Waffle Flower, to die cut some smooth white cardstock. This is Nina 110-pound weight cardstock. It's my preferred cardstock for almost everything, not quite everything, but almost. And then we are using stamps from a new stamp set from the July release. It is called the Postage Collage North Pole stamp set, so it's going to very much work for Christmas, but I'm also using the original Postage Collage stamp set for some of the cancellation marks, the price of postage. There are other new stamp sets in this release, like Royal Mail postage, and those kind of things. So definitely check all of that out. I do have links on my blog. You can find the link to my blog post down in the description below the video here on YouTube. If you want to check out any of those additional links and products from this release. I'm using a lot in my video today, but just not quite everything. I personally love this step of the process where you get to add, you know, all of the little cancellation marks and the postage, really having fun with it, I suppose. And I don't think it detracts or takes away from the postage and the cute images at all. Now, I chose to do this with VersaFine Onyx Black ink, so it really showed up. I think maybe stamping in the night color ink or a nice dark blue, a navy would also be really cool. Maybe even some red if you wanted to incorporate some red into this. That would be cute too. But I'm going to continue adding like all of the little prices and all of that stuff until I'm happy with it. Now, the great thing about the North Pole postage is there are some images. Not only do like the cancellations have snowflakes and snowmen, but there's also some snowflakes themselves, and I thought these were a perfect accent for this snowman background. So I'm going to stamp those with the sky color of ink. I actually picked sky, even though I did my ink blending for the backgrounds in this color. It is not quite as dark as the night color of ink, and it still shows up beautifully. And I'm going to stamp about 5 snowflakes here on the background. I think it ties in nicely to our snowflake postage stamp. Now, I am going to leave this background as is. The remainder cards I'm going to show cut apart. I will be including or inserting here in my video, as well as down in the description below, a link to a recent live video where I used the Poinsettia layering stencils plus the oversized Poinsettia to do, or the oversized postage with the sketched Poinsettia to do a couple of other postage style cards for even more inspiration. So you can check that out at that link. Once I have my background stamped the way I like, again, as I mentioned, I'm going to keep this one as is. I'm going to set this aside while I work on the other layering stencils. Now, next up, we are going to use the Poinsettia layering stencils. I did use those in the live that I was just talking about, and I did the very traditional red poinsettias. I want to do white poinsettias for this project today, just to switch it up, just to show you how I got the white poinsettia, and it gives a completely different look. So we are going to be doing that for those. And you can see I continue to kind of play around with the different cancellation. I will do a combination of things. I will use my Misty. I'd use my Misty here. Sometimes I just kind of get tired of all the small little parts and pieces, and I will use just an acrylic block. So it really doesn't matter. It's whatever your preference is. As I mentioned, I want this to have a different look than the Poinsettia postage I did previously. This time I'm using white cardstock. I used craft on the other video, and I am using the nice dark kale color to create a green background for my poinsettias. And yes, that means it's going to be kind of a green on green because there are some leaves that are going to be stenciled, and I'm going to do those in a lighter color. And just kind of eliminating red from the equation for these poinsettias. I think it does give them a bit more of an elegant look perhaps, but really fun, and I had a blast doing this. Now this is a 4-piece stencil set. Again, it says what set it is up at the top. It says if it's 1 of 4 or 1 of 3 or 1 of 2, whatever, and then kind of tells you this one says background, then it's going to say light for 2 of 4 stencil. For this, I do like to use points from the previous stenciling to help kind of guide me to line up where do I want this stencil to go. This is going to be what is the light portion of the poinsettia, and I want them to remain white. Now, I still want them to have some detail. So what I did was I decided to take latte colored, positively saturated ink, and I'm going to use a small detail blending brush. I really like the little round blending brushes from Simon Says Stamp, and I am going to barely ink it up with this very light color of brown. And instead of just going into the flower section and really applying the brown ink, because it will very much be brown, I am going more around the edge of the stencil and just barely pulling that color into my flower. And this is going to just barely give our flowers a little touch, but you're going to see when we take stencil number 3, because that's very light, you can see it right there. When we take stencil number 3 and apply that same latte color, we're not going to change colors at all with this stencil, and again, kind of doing the same thing just around the edge of the stencil, not just going straight in like we normally do. It's going to give our petals just enough color that when you look at this, it's white, even though we use this little touch of brown to give the definition to the flower petals. Now, I did apply it to the berries thinking, am I going to like that? I was like, whoa, you don't even see the berries. That's an absolute no. So we're going to fix that here in a little bit. We're going to take stencil 4. This is our flower centers and also the leaves of our flowers and the holly berries. And this time I am using artichoke. This is a much lighter green color, but it's in that same, it's the medium tone from the trio from Simon Says Stamp, which is cabbage, artichoke, and kale. Kale is what we used for the background. And I did a light application. I peeled up my stencil. I looked at it and thought, nope, that's still a little too light. So let's just go full in. Let's go full in with adding the color. I don't think it's going to blend into the kale too much, and it definitely didn't. I love how this turned out. So again, I'm going around and we're just inking up all of the petals, all of the holly leaves, and then for the flower centers, we're going to use a combination of honey and a little mocha. In my previous video, I showed how to apply gold paste. I used Hero Arts gold paste for my flower centers. You could do that here too if you wanted to. I was just trying to do something a little bit different, and I like how it turned out. The honey ink was a little too bright gold for me, and so adding a little bit of mocha over the top is going to mute it, but not take away from it at all. So I kind of, again, just peeled up that corner, testing, and I was like, yes, I definitely can see that it's just a little too bright. And my favorite tip is just barely, I didn't even re-ink up my brown until I had done a couple of these. Go over it just enough, kind of again along the edges like we did for the flower petals. So it still has a hint of yellow, but it just darkens it just a tiny little bit. Then I placed stencil 3 back in place. And we're going to go in with some punch color of ink, and I'm just using a small blending brush for this. And we're going to go ahead and make these holly berries red. I think they're going to show up a lot better. And as it turns out, I don't use that particular postage stamp. Look how pretty that is, you guys. I don't use it with the main poinsettias for the first card I create. Okay, we have our postage layering stencils that are gingerbread now. So cute, so adorable. Because I did green backgrounds for the poinsettias, I decided for this one, let's go ahead and do red backgrounds. So we're going to go in and I'm going to apply the punch color of ink for the backgrounds of these stencils. Now this one has more, I think it has 4, if I'm not mistaken, 4 stencils in this set again. They say up at the top how many there are, and you'll notice that this first background stencil, we're doing the backgrounds for all of our postage stamps. Then we're going to take stencil number 2, and this is going to be the base of our gingerbread. Now, we used latte for just barely adding color to the poinsettias on the previous card. For this one, we're going to go with a much heavier hand, and we're going to make this the actual gingerbread color, and it's perfect for that. So just by using a light hand on the previous card, we were able to give the shadowy effect and still come up with white poinsettias. But for this one, it very much is that beautiful gingerbread color. And I'm really going in with a heavy hand for that. Oh, it's starting to come together. Stencil 3. This is going to be the layering step for our cookies or for our gingerbread. For this one, we want it to be a nice dark shadow. So for this, I'm using mocha. And again, a very heavy hand for this. Sometimes I use the small blending brushes, sometimes the big. It's really, it kind of depends on the area and if I don't want the color to overlap or something like that. Stencil 4, we are going to go back with a red color. This time we're going to use Sangria, which is one of the colors in the trio that goes with Punch. Punch was what we used for the background, and it's going to be a deeper, darker red, so very tone on tone with these. All of my postage stamps in this video are very tone on tone, but it really shows up beautifully. Oh my word, look at those postage stamps. Now, while we're working on stenciling, let's go ahead and take this amazing new sentiment set. This is the Overlapping Christmas Words stencil. There is a coordinating die and also an Overlapping Christmas Editions stamp set that works with this. And I'm going to use Sangria, Punch, and Artichoke inks to add my color for my sentiments. Now, you could do this a lot of different ways. They do slightly overlap. So if you are really paying attention, you could do these in multiple colors. It's a 3-piece stencil. But you could do more colors than what I'm doing. I opted to kind of simplify it, and I am, again, just using like the dark red, a medium red, and a medium green. But you could definitely do these in a lot of different colors. I purposely didn't include any blue. I'm going to do a different sentiment on the Snowman card. The sentiments from this are only going to be used on 2 of the 4 cards that I'm sharing here today. Lots of mix and match going on. And I think even with you, and I didn't use the stars, so I didn't really worry about, making sure that I was blending those correctly or anything of the sort. I literally just kind of ignored the stars because I'm not going to die cut and use them. But there are coordinating dies for both of those, which is amazing. Now, once I have this completely inked up, and I should have also mentioned, I am using the large grip mat from Waffle Flower to help hold my paper and stencils in place. I love it. I love being able to keep my fingers out of all of the stenciling and ink, and also not having my stencils and paper scooch all over my work surface. I've popped the words out. Look how adorable these are. Absolutely amazing. I love this set as well. Everything in this release is just incredible. Very much starting my Christmas in July is kind of what I'm calling it. Now, I decided, even though I did my postage for all 3 sets on white, for my backgrounds, we're going to go with craft backgrounds because I personally love a craft background. Now, I also used this awesome layering stencil set. This is called the Poinsettia background stencil. It's a 2-piece set in my live video. However, I did the traditional red and green. This time, because I did white poinsettia flowers, I want to do white on craft. I'm using a picket fence pouncer and white pigment ink with the first stencil to get my flowers. And then we're going to take stencil number 2 and do a combination of artichoke and kale inks for the leaves. This is an amazing background stencil. If you love creating your own backgrounds like I do, you are going to love this. Stenciling takes all of the guesswork out of it, truly. If coloring is not your jam, if like that little detail work with the, coloring or whatever is not, this is just amazing. I can't stress enough, stencils make your job so much easier. Now, I am going to use the same background stamps that I used in my live video, which are the Hero Arts Fa La 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 and Jingle Bells stencils throughout my card creation today. I really love a good text background stamp a lot. I love how it just kind of adds subtle interest to a background. So I decided to just stick with those throughout my designs. I think they look amazing. And we're going to use white pigment ink on the craft backgrounds for all of these. Now, I did go in with a small detail blending brush just to deepen and darken areas of the leaves for the poinsettias. So our flowers are obviously white. I didn't really add anything extra to that, but the leaves are kind of a two-tone green. It's only a single stencil, so I just went in and added a little bit of the darker green color to areas. This is beautiful on its own and would look amazing with just a beautiful sentiment or two on here with some embellishments. So kind of looking at my background at this point, I laid out some of the overlapping sentiments. I'm looking at my poinsettia postage stamps and kind of getting a feel for where I want to go next. I definitely want to add that text background stamping, so I'm removing my insert from the Misty because these are red rubber background stamps from Hero Arts, and we are going to stamp the text right over the top. And for this one, I did use the Fa La 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 La, although it really doesn't matter. If you have some great Christmas text background stamps in your stash, that's great. I think both of these were released last year in 2023 from Hero Arts, if I'm not mistaken. So you may already have these in your stash or have something else that would work. And even though it goes on and it looks really dark, I do find that it kind of fades out, smooths out as that white pigment ink dries. And then once you get everything put on top, it is just incredible. So now I have my postage, but just like the snowman, I want to add my stamping on top. I'm going to speed this up a little bit because we're simply going to take the cancellation marks and things from the postage collage and the North Pole postage collage, and we're going to stamp all of our little details. And this is, again, where I feel like the magic really comes into play, and they really look like postage stamps. This time I did opt to use an acrylic block instead. I felt like I was just a little quicker with that rather than trying to line everything up with my Misty, but you can do whatever you want here. I love using a combination of the brand new stamp set with the previously released stamp set. You could always opt to use the Royal Mail postage stamp set that just was released if you wanted to, or you could leave your postage stamps without all of this stuff on them. It's really up to you. And I love that there are so many different possibilities with these products, so many different ways to mix and match and make it your own. I did make sure and stamp all three of these backgrounds. As I mentioned, the snowman background is the only one that I'm going to keep as is and just use the whole background on my card. The rest are going to get chopped up. So while I have all this stuff out, I decided let's go ahead and stamp up our gingerbread and do the same thing for this one. And then we're going to take a paper trimmer and really just kind of trying to cut right in between the dotted lines, if you will, on the postage collage background. We're going to cut these apart. Now, if you cut apart on that last section of the postage collage, so that skinny section, you can cut that straight off, and then you're able to cut apart the remaining four. And there are so many ways that you can cut these apart and use them on your cards. You can mix and match. If you have last year's Christmas postage stencils, I have a video. I am linking that in my blog post. So if you want to check that out from last year, you totally can. When these were first released, you could mix those postage with any of these and truly create some super really unique cards where you mix and match the postage from all of the different designs. So I'm cutting them apart. You will probably have to kind of, if you haven't already poked out all of the little circles, which I hadn't, you may have to go, and I kind of just run my fingernail along the edge and they pop out when they're cut apart. Or if they're still together, I like to use a piercing tool to pop out all of the little holes. Now I'm going to cut all of the postage apart for both this set as well as the gingerbread set, so that I have a ton, 12 different postage stamps to work and play with for my cards. And now comes the fun part of kind of playing around and mixing and matching them and seeing how I can manipulate them to create these card designs. So I kind of want to do it like an overlapping design where we're not totally covering up the stenciled background for 3 of my cards. So once I kind of have the arrangement the way I want it to look, I'm going to take foam adhesive and we're going to pop it up. And you can see this is the point where you really play around with things, see what works, what doesn't. I kept trying to I kept trying to include more postage stamps or see which ones I liked. But really, I just kind of settled on these 3. I'm going to see if any of the overlapping sentiments work. I don't really see anything there, so I am going to go ahead and start adhering. I think we're going to just kind of keep this one to the peace, the joy, peace, and love, or you can do whatever order you want here. And I am using the foam adhesive for all of these. Now, once I have these arranged how I want, and I love how this looks, I love the white poinsettias on the white stenciled background, I do want to include something to kind of break up the very graphic feel, I suppose, of the design. I know with the text stamping on the background, that softens it a little bit, but I really, really love the poinsettia cluster dies from this release as well. Or even if you already have something nice and dainty at home, but it has the perfect little greenery. It's got some little pine cones, which are my favorite, a little branch with berries, and this time in my live video, I die cut these from colored cardstock. I have die cut all of this from white cardstock, and then I'm inking it with my ink blending tools to match. So I'm just placing those die cut pieces right on a sticky mat, adding ink to them, and then we're going to add them to our card, kind of tucking them around our sentiments, if you will. Super easy to do, gives a really great effect. Love it inked, maybe even more than the solid cardstock. And then one of the things that I really love to do, it's something I kind of came up with last year. I don't know if came up with is the right word, but I did this a lot last year, was adding white grit paste to just little bits of greenery and pine cones and things like that, almost so it looks like snow or flocking on your Christmas type of greenery. And I love it. So we are going to do that here as well. And you take the teeniest, tiniest bit of grit paste and apply it. I like grit paste, but you could probably use other white paste as well. Kind of just depends on what you want. Now, I actually don't add it until I have it on my card. I probably could have done it to start with, but I didn't. It doesn't take too long to dry, and I find that you can generally add it afterwards, but if you feel better, you can always do it first, set it somewhere to dry, and then adhere it to your card. I like to live on the edge just a little bit, apparently. So here are my pine cones. I'm going to go ahead and put some foam back behind these, and then I'll just add a little bit of the grit paste just to the edges, like so. And I just kind of take it, there we go. I was hoping I moved it back into the frame, even if it's not showing up great. And you can see I'm just kind of swiping it across my pine cones. I also did this in the live video, so you can check that out here. One of the great things about applying the grit paste over an inked image rather than a solid cardstock is I do feel like it kind of lightens a little bit, which I like. I like a lot. And that's even goes for on the greenery. Now for the berries, I did add some crystal lacquer sparkle, so the berries are kind of sparkly. Because crystal lacquer or any type of glossy accents is a liquid product applied to an inked image, it may change the color of the berries a little bit. In this case, it did. They kind of come off maybe a little orangey. However, I don't really mind that. I kind of liked how it looked, and I even added a little grit paste to some of the berries. I don't think I did it on all of the cards. There is what our first card looks like. So much fun and so easy. To do a little bit different kind of background. So this is the Holly Jolly die and stencil background. The Holly Jolly die cuts the leaves and berries partially. So if you want to pop them up a little bit, this is something that is not new to Waffle Flower. They've done this with other sets. It is awesome. And I'm going to ink up, again, I've die cut it from craft cardstock. We're going to ink up everything with our artichoke and punch or sangria, I can't remember which, just reds and greens inks. And then we're going to stamp over the background before we do any popping up of these leaves. This is a two-piece stencil, which makes it really easy. This stencil obviously doing all the green, then we'll do all of the red on the second one. Then I'm going to place it in my Misty. I think I used the Jingle Bells background for this, and this will be the background of our gingerbread card. Any text background is really going to work here. You really aren't reading it a lot. I do love when the text background matches the season or occasion, but it doesn't have to because it's not really something you're actually reading. I do love the script of this though. So pretty. And again, this does tend to fade just a little bit once it dries, and this background would be beautiful all on its own or maybe with a little bit more simple type of sentiment and imagery. So definitely keep that in mind. I'm again going to speed up kind of the creation of this card. I played around with placement a lot for this one, trying to decide how I wanted to do the postage. Again, I like to start by cutting off the right side and then I cut down the middle of the remaining 4, and then you can just cut them all apart. I decided I really feel like the 3 is a good number, and I'm going to move my greeting down. I kind of thought I would put it in the middle. If you want to only use maybe 1 or 2 postage stamps, I think you could really have more of the background show if you wanted to. That might work nice. I was limited a bit by the stenciled greetings that were left over, and I kind of left this in the video. I wanted to really show my thought process. I actually think that would have been kind of cute. I don't know why I didn't leave it like that. If I hadn't added anything at the top, having them overlap kind of would be really, really cute. Anyhow, I do like how it ends up, but I like to show how I come to what I get to. Now, I did decide not to put the 2 gingerbread houses side by side. Those are probably my 2 favorite postage stamps from the set. However, I really want to use the rest of the postage stamps on the remaining card. I don't want any of them to go to waste. And I thought that it was just a little too much right next to each other. So I went more by size. And once I have them laid out kind of how I like, I've settled on this one. We're going to start attaching everything with foam adhesive just like we did before. This time though, I will use the overlapping sentiments stamp set, and right over the word Christmas, I stamped to you. So it's Merry Christmas to you. I love how that turns out. Oh my word, it's so good. And then we're going to kind of start at the bottom and start building up our card. Just like before, I'm going to do that little grouping of greenery and pine cones. We're going to ink it up with grit paste, sparkle lacquer, all the things. just like before, kind of have it tucked into our greeting, overlapping some of the elements. It softens it, it adds loads of interest, and I really, really like how it turns out. I didn't overlap the postage stamps on this one quite as much. I didn't like how it looked. I kind of just squared them up, if you will, and I like that a lot better. I kept trying to because I liked it so much on the poinsettia card. Do you guys do that too? Sometimes I just love it so much, I'm just try to force it to work instead of letting it naturally come together. So now we are going to add all of our greenery. So I'm going to go ahead and ink up my cardstock off camera. You can see I'm kind of just folding up some of the leaves and things in the background so that they slightly lift. Now that I have most everything attached, it just adds a little added interest. And then we're simply tucking the same greenery pieces. I opted to just stick to the one branch, the little holly branch, and a couple of pine cones for these 3 cards. The snowman card is the only one I didn't use these pieces on because I just really didn't feel like it needed it or that it went. But it goes really great with the rest of them. So here we're just going to add in our pine cones with a little grit paste. I'm going to grab my tweezers for a lot of this to kind of keep my fingers out of it. We're adding berries. And I kind of put my finger underneath the branch to protect my card as I apply a little bit of the grit paste. I thought, do I want to put the pine cone somewhere else? I'm like, no, stop trying to make that happen. Let me know if you get the reference. And then we're going to just tuck that in. I kind of like them tucked in like this. In fact, I liked it so much that I'm going to do it on the last card as well. So now we're 2 cards down. Ready for our snowman card. Now this guy I felt like needed to do something a little different, but I still wanted it to tie in to the rest of my cards. So I went to my waffle flower stash and found my snowflake background stencil. Any kind of snowflake stencil is going to work here. Maybe you have layering snowflake stencils from Pretty Pink Posh, or I'm just throwing out ones I know that I have. I have some from Simon Says Stamp, whatever. I stenciled them on the craft cardstock. I still want my base to be craft, and I wanted to have a snowflake background. I used the Night Color ink. We're going to stamp over this with the Jingle Bells, and I did pick the Jingle Bells background for a reason. From the Waffle Flower Sentiment stamp set called Elegant Christmas 2, there is a greeting in here that is "Oh What Fun," and I thought, isn't "Oh What Fun" super cute with the Jingle Bells text background? I mean, only you and I are probably going to know that. I doubt the recipient really squints and looks at the tiny bit of background that they can see and sees that it says Jingle Bells. But I just liked it. For me, I just liked it. Look at that. Oh, I love it so much. I love that craft background with the stark white and blue. Ugh, so pretty. So we're going to put foam back behind the postage stamps. Do be careful because where the postage stamps have the little poked out holes, you don't want foam to show there because it also would be sticky. And then I'm going to stamp "Oh What Fun" on some Blue Jay Lawn Fawn cardstock with clear embossing ink and heat emboss with white embossing powder before adhering to my card. Now I did try to make the branches and the things work, but ultimately I was just like, yeah, it's not going to be a thing. The great thing about this Elegant Christmas 2 stamp set, and really the other stamp set that I am using today, which is the Family Christmas, they have coordinating dies for the greetings that die cut right next to the greeting, so it's absolutely perfect. We are going to die cut our greetings with the coordinating die and then pop it up with foam right in the middle. Then, because this card doesn't have the greenery, it doesn't have a lot of that foof, I guess, if you will, I'm going to take some either glossy accents or crystal lacquer, and we're going to use that on our carrot noses for our snowmen so they have some dimension, and we're going to use sparkle lacquer on the buttons for our snowmen. And that's going to make those kind of sparkly. It changes, it almost gives it a little bit of a teal effect, I guess. Again, applying a liquid product over an inked product sometimes does react with the ink and make it change color a bit. In this case, it looks really, really good. Sometimes it doesn't, and that would be a bummer, but it works out great here. So I'm just putting a little thin foam back behind my die cut greeting. And then we'll pop that in place. And I love how this turned out. You still get to see all the postage stamps this way. So it's very much the background, but it also is super interesting. All right. And now we're going to apply those liquid products to the noses and the buttons going down the front. And I like to squirt out my product a little bit on either, like I was using the foam adhesive backing paper, because if I feel like it's going to squirt out and make a mess, then I always try to test it first just to make sure. I worry about that a lot. You don't want it to squirt out and ruin your project. And that's going to dry clear and be so cool. Okay, I did stencil another poinsettia background, and I am taking all of my leftover postage stamp pieces, and we're going to use those on our remaining card. And for this one, I felt like we would use it more as a design element. It is an embellishment, but it's almost going to cover the top, I don't know, half of the background. So I'm going to apply them at an angle, actually, I decided, and we're going to have to be kind of creative with how we apply these. So I'm putting foam. Again, I felt like it just added that little bit of lift and interest off of our background. And I'm going to start with the bottom row as such, and then we're going to add the rest. And then anything we trim off, we're not going to discard, because we're going to need a couple of pieces to fill in some areas. Now, I didn't quite have enough, but I think I was able to fudge it enough that it's going to work. So that's something to keep in mind. If I had gone maybe slightly higher on the panel, it might have worked a little bit better, but that's okay. I did lay them out prior to this, but I'm almost positive I laid them out a little higher than what I ended up adhering them. So now I have them all down. I'm going to trim off the excess. And I'm just placing them on that backing sheet for my foam adhesive, if it has foam on it. And you can see I've got two little corners. So I need to figure out how to fill these in. Okay, I think that little piece is going to work there. Perfect. And then it's a little bit of a struggle for this final corner. So I really want to use this one, but it doesn't exactly fit. So what I'm going to do, and I considered a lot of different things here, I'm going to just snip off that little skinny tip of the triangle that's left, and I'm going to piece it in. And it's such a tiny little bit that I don't think you'll even really notice that it's not perfect. I mean, now you guys know, but I love it. I love this background. It's so cute. And it's a great way to use up your little parts and pieces. So let's go ahead and stamp a greeting on black cardstock from the Family Christmas Sentiment stamp set. And then let's add our greenery all around it. And I decided to do black for my greeting on this one because it's a pretty busy background. We got a lot of stuff going on. We have our stenciled and stamped background. We have our stenciled postage stamps. And I thought the black would make kind of a bold sentiment. And I chose We Wish You a Merry Christmas. I love the combination of fonts on this with the scripty and then just kind of the classic font. And it has coordinating dies, as I mentioned, just like the other stamp set I used for the Snowman card. And then I needed to figure out, how do I want to attach my sentiment? I originally thought I would do it straight, but I kind of like it at an angle. kind of following the line of our postage stamps along the bottom. So I'm going to put foam back behind here. You can see I already have all of my greenery ready to go. We're going to place our sentiment. And yep, I definitely like it like this because I want to have somewhere where I can tuck the greenery into, and the sentiment works really good for this. So I like it at that angle. Plus it gives your eye a place to rest. With all the busy postage, and then we have the sentiment and the greenery. Even though our background is our own custom pattern paper, I do feel like it does kind of give your eye a spot to rest. So we're just going to tuck everything around it, assemble, embellish, just like we have done before. And that is going to wrap up our 4th card today. I'm going to attach all of my cards to top fold or side fold card bases. All the panels, pardon me. And then on the inside of each card, we are going to take greetings from the Inside Sentiments Family Christmas Stamp Set and stamp the insides of the cards just to kind of finish them off beautifully. So let's take a little peek at that. I'll just show you the insides. Perfect way to finish off your cards. And I kind of just picked different sentiments that I felt like went with each. I love the font of these as well. Thank you guys so much for joining me today for this set of 4 stenciled Christmas postage cards featuring waffle flower products. The supplies I used to create my cards are listed and linked below the video here on YouTube. Thank you guys so much for joining me today, and we'll see you in the next video. Bye! Thank you so much for joining me today for another paper crafting tutorial. I love being able to share with this incredible community of crafters. I want to give a huge shout out and special thank you to my amazing Patreon members. If you're interested in joining Patreon, please click the link in the description underneath the video here on YouTube. Patreon is a private community where you can support more of what I do. There is exclusive content, information, and behind-the-scenes content. Top-tier members will receive a handmade birthday card during your birthday month, access to D-Stash, and monthly exclusive lives, plus so much more. We would love to have you join our growing community. Please be sure to subscribe to my channel, click that like button, and don't forget to hit the notification bell to always be notified when I have a new video. Thanks for watching!